Hello everyone! Today I'm going to showcase a small Bronze Age settlement I built along this gorgeous and quaint Black Forest River in my latest survival playthrough. In this video, I will tell the story of how this build evolved into what you see before you. I will talk through the inspiration I use for certain sections, show you how to build some prominent features, and even reveal some behind-the-scenes screenshots of early iterations taken throughout the build process. My name is Homitu, and this is the Joy of Building video series. I was in the thick of a fresh survival playthrough, tired after slaving away in a copper mine, when I stumbled upon the perfect little river bend in the forest. It's hard to go wrong with any location in Valheim, but this particular spot on the north bank of the river struck me. I always like to build my houses along water, facing south, so that the front is illuminated by the sun throughout the day. This awesome spot on the north bank of the river bend was guaranteed to have great lighting and views from sunrise to sunset. I set up shop right next to a naturally generated stone tower, which served as my survival mode shelter while I got to building my house. Nothing special here. I just threw a makeshift roof over a section of it, plopped a bed down, made a fire, and called it a day. I also used this area to smelt my copper and tin while I focused on building. Next, I started to work on the house. About a month earlier, I had seen a video from another YouTuber named Zom0, where he built a sort of spiky longhouse using an interesting technique with reversed O-frame roof pieces to create roof spires that descend at a 45-degree angle from the main roof. I hadn't seen that specific technique done before, thought it looked super cool, so I wanted to try it out. Please check out his video. It's a really cool build. I'll put the link below. Here's an early screenshot where I framed out the basic concept. And here's the next progress pic I have. Ultimately, I didn't like how stocky and compact the roof looked. I also didn't like how the angled roof just covered the regular roof for a huge section. So I moved the angled roof further to the edge, elongating it and stretching it further outward. I lined the edges with some ladders because I thought it looked cool, and then crossed the beams at the top to cap it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep these extended all the way to the ground or not, so I left them for now to see how I felt about them later. You'll notice in this screenshot that I added a 26-degree spine to the right side of the roof, but I left it off on the left side. I wasn't sure if I liked it yet. This is something I do with a lot of features I build that I'm unsure about. I leave one side up with it and the other without. Then I'll continue building and I'll log off. After spending some time away, when I log back on next time, I'll often have immediate positive or negative reaction to seeing it, and that will determine whether or not I keep it. You can see in the finished product that I ultimately decided I liked it and added it to both sides. Before continuing on the house, I wanted to get my carrot farm going. I was starting to see that this build might take a little more time than I initially thought. Since I was going to be spending a lot of time building here, that time would serve as a great opportunity to get my carrot supply snowballing. I had already hastily dug out a small lopsided garden on the hill behind my house to get things started. I wanted to build it out fully, so I had a clearer idea of what the back of my house would look like. I flattened a little more land to get the garden to sufficient size, leaving its natural shape. To hide the awkward cliff this flattening created, I haphazardly placed fences around the ledge and filled in the gaps with bushes, small fir trees, and even a few thistle. I used the Plant Everything mod to place these basic floral pieces. I didn't care about being precise with the placement of these things, as the feel I was going for with this garden was that of natural overgrowth. This would become a theme I used throughout my build. I wanted to work with the natural layout of the land, rather than fully conform the land to my will. I kept most trees where they were, and left the natural slope of the land intact. I completed the space by sprinkling the beehives I had gathered thus far into the trees around the garden, creating a loose border with custom core wood fencing, and adding some of my favorite Black Forest lighting by building brazier posts into the trees themselves. Next, I wanted to try to connect my house to the back garden. Because the garden was up on a hill, any rear entrance to the house would have to be up on the second floor of the house. I began by building a little bridge from the land to the house using an open grid of 1 meter beams. My idea for this extension was to keep things open and exposed to nature. I ultimately changed that to a custom core wood floor to hide the choppy exposed rock below. I used a wood grid concept instead for the walls. I added some planters using item stands and Grey Dwarf Brute trophies, and then capped the patio with staircases instead of roofs to keep that open feel going. With the garden area complete and my carrots growing, it was time to return to the house. The first step was to complete the roof and get a feel for the full final shape of the house. A quick note before we continue to avoid confusion. I didn't film any footage while working on this build. As I said, this build was part of a survival playthrough, and I just kind of worked on it here and there in between the survival aspect of the game. This is why you see me bouncing instead between shots of the finished product and occasional screenshots I grabbed throughout the process. However, in effort to tell a more complete story and make a more enjoyable video, I am occasionally dismantling and filming myself rebuilding certain specific parts. The order I'm showing you is the exact order I built each section, but this is why you may see quote-unquote future parts of the build completed in the background during some of my shots. I'm curious to hear how clear and enjoyable this format is for you all, so please feel free to comment and let me know. Anyway, back to the build. I was loving the dramatic effect of the 45-degree roof spires on the higher central section of my house, so I wanted to experiment with the same idea on the 2 shorter side extensions of my house as well. Unlike Zom Zero's build, which featured 45-degree roof angles throughout, I thought adding 26-degree roof for contrast might look sleeker on my specific house. However, when built using the same technique, these 26-degree beams ran parallel to the 45-degree spires above and just kind of created an awkward umbrella canopy, which you can see in the screenshot here. It just didn't look good to me. I solved this by tweaking the design slightly and angled the 26-degree beams inward toward the house by 1 rotation on either side. This folded the lower roof spires neatly underneath the higher spires. I was really happy with the look. All that was left was to cap them off with some beams and add some spikes. With the roof complete, it was time to work on the walls and figure out what each section of the house would look like. As a Black Forest build in my survival world, I wanted to limit myself to Bronze Age materials. Naturally, I went with a core wood cabin style for the base of the house, but for the side rooms, I wanted to do something to distinguish them a little bit. I remembered seeing a build from over 2 years ago on Reddit of a traditional Korean hanok home that utilized a cool concept with randomly assembled wooden beams to create walls with interesting shapes and openings. I decided to give it a try here. I really liked the effect, as it continued my theme of openness and blending with nature. I capped it off by building a custom awning, since the thatch awning just didn't feel right for the rest of it. I then added a little balcony above and sprinkled in some plants to give it a finishing touch. I broke my Bronze Age only material rule to add a jute rug in the center because it just kind of felt right. For the other side of the house, I contemplated a few different uses for the room. My initial idea was a storage room with chests. I experimented with a few styles using ladders as shelves for the chests. In the end, I couldn't come up with anything I liked. It all seemed to take up too much space rather than save space. My next idea was a kitchen with a chimney. I thought this looked kind of cool as it was built around a tree that was actually acting as a vital support for the roof on that side of the house. But between the facts that A, there aren't really many kitchen components available during the Bronze Age yet, and B, having a tree inside your fireplace was a bit comical, I backed off of that idea. Ultimately, I decided I loved the Korean style I used on the other side so much that I'll use it again on this side, except I'd carve out a chimney-like opening to include that tree, further enhancing the organic, natural vibe of the room. I turned this into my base's workshop. What better place to do some woodworking than in a very natural, woodsy room? I didn't mention it before, but I offset both of these wings down by a little less than 1 meter. Adding layers to your interiors like this is a great way to visually section off rooms while retaining an open feel to the overall interior. The last steps of building the house involved carving out the second floor, which I needed to get up to the back door garden level. So I created a staircase along the back wall stemming from the Korean sitting room. Since horizontal space was tight, I had to go with ladders instead of stairs. Upstairs, I created a wraparound balcony to overlook the entryway downstairs. This creates a major sense of openness both downstairs and upstairs. This is something I like to do with a lot of my builds. I personally place a lot of value on visual openness. That left space for 2 small bedrooms on either side of the second floor. I made the east bedroom a little larger, allowing it to extend fully beneath the house extension. On the west side, I cut the room off short before reaching the extension above the workshop. This differentiated the rooms a little, creating the idea of a master bedroom and a guest room. More importantly, it preserved higher ceilings in the workshop room downstairs, which I really wanted. I added a custom chandelier in the center to fully realize the open space for both floors. I leveled it to the window so it would also look great from the outside. Downstairs, I honestly didn't know what to do with the center of the house. I still needed storage, so I tried my best to work with that ladder idea again, while keeping it neat and tucked away. I added a stand for my fermenter and a built-in cabinet for the fermenter ingredients and potions. I ended up building a simple corewood fireplace in the center. This exhausts out to underneath the garden level porch on the second floor. There's apparently enough clearance so that the fire doesn't choke out, so that worked out. I finished up with a few simple tables and rugs and called it a day. Thinking my house complete, I headed outside to inspect my work and got distracted by my front entrance. A prominent front face is a cornerstone to any cool house in my opinion. At the time, I only had a short awning comprised of 26-degree thatch and 1-meter floorboards, so I briefly toyed with the idea of extending my front awning out in a cascading manner. Before I knew it, I had a surprise balcony on my hands. I played around with a few options for both the roof slope and the doors connecting to the inside until I was satisfied. With my house officially complete, it was time to revisit the runestone tower. I didn't want it just to be an abandoned eyesore next to my awesome new house. While struggling to find the perfect spot for a chimney in my house, an idea brewed in my mind. What if I turned that entire stone tower into one giant crazy chimney? I also still needed a place for my forge, kilns, and smelters to go. Thus, I tried to turn the whole structure into a working, burning, smoky forge. I wanted to give it structure while preserving its dilapidated stone shape. I didn't want to just build a wooden house around it and a roof over it, covering it all up. I began by dropping 2 hearths on the inside edges and a whole bunch of random fireplaces on the outside ledges. Then, I messed around with the giant chimney shape on the inside, but kept it in a sort of incomplete skeletal form. To me, this served both to accent the ruined nature of the stone tower, as well as continue the open, airy theme I had established back at the garden and with the open style walls in my house, creating a sense of cohesiveness across the whole build. I added 2 symmetrical custom awnings in a similar style, a bunch of vertical corewood posts to add contrast against the stone, and a little thatch plus staircase combo roof over the blacksmith section. Lastly, I adorned the forge with some blacksmith-related decorations and added some vines to tie it in with the natural look of the rest of the build. On the east end, I experimented with some crazy similar awnings above my kilns, but they were all just awful. Just nope. In the end, I went with a corewood stand in the same style as the corewood fences I used back at my garden. I then added plants around that as well. It may seem like such a minor detail, but adding little features like this go such a long way to tie the whole build together and make it feel really polished and complete. I then added the same fences around the forge and created a small campsite just to complete the scene. Now it was time for the bridge. I knew I wanted a bridge from the beginning, since I had been venturing across the river a bunch for various burial chamber and resource gathering expeditions. Also, this river was the absolutely perfect width for one. Also, bridges are just awesome. I had built a few decent stone bridges in the past that I thought would work well, but I didn't want to use stone for this Bronze Age build. I had also recently seen Smitty Survival showcase a gorgeous stone arch bridge. I love the idea of an arch bridge over this particular river with the awesome lighting coming from both the east and the west, and I really wanted to make it work. So I set to testing out the concept first. I started with an arch shape using core wood and replaced the stone portion with wooden wall panels. I connected one archway to a large stone in the middle of the river for support and built a second archway. It wasn't easy to get the arches to look perfect, but they didn't need to be perfect. Sometimes there's beauty in natural imperfection. On a whim, after connecting the two archways with a flat core wood walkway on top, I tested the idea of creating a central pillar and extending 45-degree support beams down from it. I really liked the look and knew I was onto something. I removed the wall panels and I replaced it with spaced out core wood beams. The only problem was I was originally building this right in front of my house with the idea that it would connect right to my front door. I was originally imagining a short bridge, but now the huge tower of the bridge blocked the best view of the front of my house. My options were to either use a shorter bridge design or move it. I moved it. Set off to the side, I can now enjoy these two awesome prominent structures in one view. They really complement each other now instead of detracting from each other. I finished the bridge walls by adding cabin-style core wood horizontal beams on both sides. It was quite tricky to manipulate their snap points to get them to go exactly where I wanted them to, and it took quite a bit of time, but I really think it was worth the effort. Down the center, I built a central core wood tower around the rock that was there and did evenly spaced out beams in the midsection. Again, quite tricky to get precise. For the walkway, I opted for a 2-meter centered path with railroad track-like 1-meter beams on either side. I lined that with core wood just underneath the floorboards. I cascaded this path gradually down using manually placed 1-meter floorboards at certain intervals. Along the top, I connected both sides with cross beams and hung braziers and banners for mood effect. Lastly, I polished off once again with vines and some bushes and trees at each end. On the far end, I tied the scene together with a few more core wood fence posts and some shrubbery, a couple of braziers, and hints of a couple trails venturing up into the woods along the river. The full settlement was nearly complete. But now that the bridge had been moved from the front of my house, I felt like I needed to do something there. I expanded the front deck and added a little boat and a fishing dock, making sure to stay consistent with my core wood style. I filled in all of the unsightly terrain blemishes with lush vegetation. Finally, I cascaded the porch down on the west end to create the suggestion of a trail that ventures away along the river just to complete the scene. There you have it. I had a lot of fun with this build, from its humble survival camp beginnings to a full scene born out of several pieces of inspiration. This one kind of feels like a painting to me. Thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know if you enjoyed this style of video in the comments section below. Your feedback genuinely matters to me, and I really do read every single comment. Also, please like and subscribe if you found this video at all enjoyable. These videos take a surprising amount of time and work to put together, and supporting me in that small way goes a long way to helping my channel grow. Until next time, happy building.